How can I say it? How can you say it? And how can we say it? Toastmasters members, guests, good evening. I just want to echo what I've said. How can you say it? How can we say it? And how myself can I say it? And when I say this, something actually comes to my head, or my mind rather, is when a girl tells you, I'm fine. And when she tells you, I'm fine, you realize that there is a message that is packaged in both of the phrases. I'm fine would probably mean she's okay, but I'm fine tells you that something is wrong. And this is just to stress on the point of how to say it is actually important. Actually, I remember when I was in primary school during a science class, the teacher decided that we'll talk about our future careers. And he asked, what would you like to become? And everybody was there saying, I'd like to be an engineer, I'd like to be a doctor, and all those big careers. When it got to me, I said, I'd like to be a musician. And the whole class was looking at me and laughing. And coincidentally, that evening, my mother also asked me the same question. What would you like to become? And I said happily and joyfully, I like to be a musician. The look that she gave me was enough to tell me that you have earned yourself a beating. And ladies and gentlemen, trust me, that evening, the beating that I got made me never, ever want to be a musician. Later on, I sat down to think about it. And I realized that the issue was not me wanting to be a musician, but the main issue was how I put across this message. I would have done it in a more modest way. And that's what makes it, this subject, a subject of interest, how to say it. You see, in high school, we learned about the nonverbal cues, which are simply the tools that we use when speaking. That is voice, tonal variation, facial expressions, the gestures, and so on. But one thing they didn't actually teach us during that grammar class, during that English class, was how do you strike a connection when you're speaking to somebody? How do you exactly connect when you're speaking to somebody? How do you strike that emotional connection when you're speaking to somebody? So the thing is about connection, when you connect, you are able to communicate. So without a connection, there's no communication. And in this journey of life, I have discovered, or I have learned, two very important techniques or tips that you can use when communicating and with the intent of striking a connection when speaking. And number one is making somebody comfortable around you. You see, when you're talking, you want somebody to understand you. You want them to get your perspective and you want to get their perspective. And this person has to find a safe haven inside you. They don't have to feel intimidated in any way. They have to feel very comfortable sharing anything with you. And it is through that you're able to communicate what you have, you as a speaker, whether it's an audience that you're speaking to, whether it's a friend, or whether it's a total stranger. Somebody has to feel comfortable around you. And this is actually one of the tips I'd like gentlemen to take tonight. That when you're trying to sweep a lady off her feet, she has to feel comfortable around you. And how do you do this? Through your facial expressions. You realize if I came up to you and said, hi, can you help me? Most times you'll be like, okay, what do you want? But if I came up to you and said, hi, can I have a word with you? You'd be like, no, your facial expression, no. There are other many ways that you can use to make somebody feel comfortable around you. And my second point is finding a common ground. You see, finding a common ground is having something in common, basically it. And the thing about human beings, we are attracted to people who are like us. So as you're communicating, you ought to find the common ground between you as a speaker and the person that you're speaking to. And this one essentially leads to people connecting, because the basis of any kind of connection is communication. And in retrospect, I think if I had these tips back then, I'd know how exactly to break it to my mother that I want to be a musician. Probably I'll sit her down and make her a cup of coffee and then tell her, now, here's a story. And who knows, probably I'd be a musician right now. But anyways, now that you know it and that I've given you the tips, go out there and say it. And remember, for you to communicate well, you have to connect well. Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster.